everybody, I'm Danny Otto. Welcome into an all-new episode of That Recap Show. Now, before we get into the episode, just want to issue major spoiler alert. We are going to be going over everything that happened in episode 9 of the X-Men 97 series. So if you haven't watched that episode yet, you may want to pause this video, head over to Disney Plus, check out that episode, and then come back and enjoy the breakdown. Now, with that out of the way, let's start the show!
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.
Joining with me to break down everything from episode 9 of the X-Men 97 series, it's Jon Jon Rico!
Hello!
Hello!
What's up?
I am resisting every urge not to start doing the X-Men 97 theme song. We're getting it! You're getting it next episode. I'm not doing the season finale without doing it.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
It's happening. Spoiler alert. That's what you're getting at the beginning of next episode. Anyway, this is... I need to watch all 3 of these like back to back to back because I just feel like these would make a perfect like cartoon movie. Like that's what we're getting basically in this 3-part finale is like we're getting these big epic chunks of things. You know what I mean? I don't want to keep repeating myself and saying so much happened, but it did. Like there's stuff, like so much stuff. And I feel like even when I finish the episode, I'm like, the fuck just happened? Like it's just so much.
Especially after this one for sure.
Yeah. I had to like watch it again and just kind of like be alone with my thoughts. Like, I guess. But I really am looking at these 3 parts as like if you smush them together, we get like, you know, like a cartoon, like a cartoon movie, basically. Because I just feel like everything is on such a grand scale with these 3 episodes in a row. And you know, there's no like time in between each one of them. We're got them like all right. They're picking up right where the last one left off type of thing. And I'm going to start with like the thing that I really, really enjoyed. What I loved seeing was Beast finally in battle. Like, you know, we had him kind of last episode when we were getting like the human sentinels starting to be activated where he was like, you know, jumping around and stuff like that. But we actually got to see him in battle this time. And I thought that was really cool. And especially him opposite Morph, who turned into the Hulk, and we got the catchphrase, Morph! Like, I loved it. Like, I enjoyed that part so much. Like, all of the fighting scenes and stuff like that, just like last episode, were awesome in it of themselves, but that's just the one fighting part that I really, really enjoyed was seeing the 2 of them kind of fighting together and especially Morph as Hulk. I just thought that was awesome. But Rico, what were some of your instant reactions to episode 9?
Yeah, I called that Hulk cameo.
Yeah,
after seeing that Thunderbolt Ross kind of like he was kind of I thought he was basically hinting at the Hulk. So I'm like, we better get the Hulk in some form. And at least we got Morph as the Hulk, which is kind of like a you know, basically it's not the same thing, but it's the same thing at the same time. So and it also, yeah, again, it got that great more smash line at the end there by but one of the actually the shots I love the most is when Jean used the Hulk to kind of do that like that spinning move that you see Hulk do in like video games and stuff like that. Yeah, like the spinning fit, kind of like Donkey Kong almost when he does that and like Smash. But so I love that a lot too. But yeah, this was a really great episode. And also one of the shots I loved at the beginning of the episode when Xavier wakes up, like he's basically waking up in like this destroyed mansion. And like, okay, well I got home, I just need to get like a nice night sleep first.
Yeah, like I was bed.
My bed is not destroyed. I can go get some sleep first and have a nice wake up to a nice sunshine. So that was really, really funny. And then it just kind of gets right into business. But yeah, it brings the whole like, Xavier Magneto rivalry back to the forefront of the X-Men story. Cause like we kind of had this, the whole season is just basically, Magneto's X-Men with Charles being gone. And now that he's come back, it's just kind of like turned everything back to what the original series kind of felt like to be, like these two on opposite sides. And except in this kind of it hits a little bit more home because now we're seeing a divide between like our actual team So it's basically Civil War in the X-Men. So it's pretty cool. So especially if you love like the Civil War storyline in the comics and stuff like that, but just kind of seeing like this scenario where you're seeing this team break up into two different factions in itself, just like the original rivalry did before between like the X-Men, the Brotherhood of Mutants. Like we're seeing a new brotherhood form, but with actual members of the X-Men that we've kind of grown to love. So it makes it hurt like just a little bit more. And it's also, it's bringing in points that you can agree with on both sides. So I think it's really cool how it brought that rivalry back to the forefront in like a big way, and it had big ramifications for the story going forward.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. I love like that we kind of got that rivalry back, and this leads perfectly into what I wanted to talk about in takeaways. So, would you want to get to some big takeaways?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna kick off big takeaways only because, like I said, you led perfectly into this where we got this rivalry, but we kind of got it in a more, I guess, closer to home feel because it is like it's a faction within the actual X-Men, and I just had to take a minute to think about this. Like, why did everybody immediately like start being pissy about Magneto? Because the last thing that happened in episode 8, Magneto basically saved everyone from the human Sentinels. Like, I get it. Like, he turned all of the power off for everyone. It was an EMP blast that encompassed the entire planet. I get that. But it was like no other choice. I'm sure some of the X-Men would have died at that point, like before, if he hadn't done that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like that shouldn't have been the situation that like everybody was like, Magneto was wrong for doing that. We need to like blah, blah, blah. Like, now, don't get me wrong. He takes it a bit too far when we start getting, Asteroid M and all of that, like the craziness. Like, he starts going a little far. I get that. But like that should have been where the concern talk started. It shouldn't have been Magneto EMP'd the entire globe. We need to make him change his way. Like, no, he just fucking saved everyone. Like, let him have his day. Be like, hey, that was a good plan. Now we need to rebuild and help everybody out again. Like, instead of like turning this into a war of humans versus mutants, like let's now rebuild the rubble together type of thing. Like, I just feel like the approach here was just poorly planned. But I agree with you when you take it as the far extreme that Magneto does, and where we start getting the rift between like in Team X-Men. I am Team X-Men, like I'm not Team Magneto on that side, but just the initial, like, even Wolverine was like, he went too far. You were fighting off the human Sentinels that, like, when you slashed them in half, they would just back together. Like, what was your end game, Wolverine? Like, I just don't, I didn't get that attitude towards it. Like I said, not on Magneto's side with Asteroid M and the extreme side of things, but like just the beginning, I think the initial approach was a little off on being against Magneto from the start. But Rico, what were some of your takeaways for this episode?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's more because the whole like Xavier Magneto kind of rivalry kind of stems from that whole how they approach the whole mutant and human affair, right? Obviously Magneto is willing to go to the extreme to kind of protect his people, and of course he goes to the absolute extreme of that when he EMPs the entire world. So it's a decision that affects both humans and mutants, and I think that's always what Xavier and the X-Men have always tried to avoid doing, even if that means at the cost of their own team. Like, they don't want to forward this conflict that makes mutants look bad in the eyes of humans. So I think that's something, and it also didn't help because it didn't really amplify the tensions between humans and mutants even more, because when everything going out, everyone's kind of going crazy. I mean, they had that one point where Jubilee and Roberto were cornered by a bunch of a mob of humans, and then Storm and Force showed up. So I think they're doing a good job of kind of like, again, they present both sides of the argument really well, and they've actually done a really good job of kind of making Magneto's side make a lot more sense, as opposed to like when we were growing up, we've always just seen Magneto be the villain, I guess.
Right.
And it's the X-Men versus the Brotherhood, right? But I think now they're presenting it as two sides that you can kind of be like, oh, I'm Team Magneto, I'm Team Xavier. It's almost like the Team Tony, Team Cap argument, right? So it's kind of like that same thing. So I kind of actually really like that dynamic, because it brings that discussion to the table, and it makes it a very interesting thing to talk about, like with your friends and stuff like that. Like if you agree with what he did versus like yeah, he should have like let that happen because again, it did turn off all the Sentinels and gave them kind of formulate this plan that they can help defeat the Bastion. So there's kind of the good and the bad to take away from it. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting discussion that's kind of brought forward from both perspectives. But man, one of the things I freaking loved about this episode is like we just get some classic comic book suits in this too. We get that great suit where everyone gets a suit up, and then the little interaction between Cable and Scott where he's just like, "Wow, really? We're doing this?" And he goes, "What did you expect? Black leather?" Which is a great nod to the original X-Men movie where Cyclops again has the line and goes, "What'd you expect? The leather spandex." So it's just or the yellow spandex, yeah. So it's just kind of like a great callback and also a great just like kind of burn on that old franchise itself. For as good as stuff that brought us, there's also a lot of the bad that it had too, and that was definitely the black leather suits were not very well remembered. So yeah, I just absolutely love that. I love seeing and the title credits. I love seeing Storm back in the title credits, but of course getting to see her in her classic suit, which is also from the comics. Wolverine's the kind of yellow and red suit, yellow and brown suit that he's in, and then of course Marvel Girl Jean just kind of being back. I love like how her the thing that holds her costume still has the red wig. I'm like, does she wear a wig? I'm like, she already has red hair. But I love that.
That's more illustrious.
Yeah, even Cable gets like a classic suit, which I love. Like he's from the future, but he still gets like this classic old school suit, and then Morph gets his awesome suit as well. So yeah, I just loved everything about that. Just getting to see them in that old school element because we just get everyone just like it's almost like the final act suit. Like in the final act, everyone gets their final suits, and that's kind of what we got here. And I loved every second of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I love when, we can get one piece of art making fun of or poking fun at the other piece of art when we had that other piece of art already poking fun at the comic book art type of thing. Like having a joke that now is both poking at each other is awesome.
Yeah, it's so good.
It works perfectly. But yeah, I loved that. And yeah, I mean, I've said this plenty of times in the past. I'm kind of experiencing this backwards in the sense of growing up, I didn't, read a lot of the classic comics and I didn't, get into these classic comic storylines, but I did watch cartoons and I did watch the movies and stuff like that. So now I'm kind of going backwards. So it's really cool to see these nods at the classic costumes and the classic suit ups and stuff like that. And now to be able to go back to look at that and, other events that happened in this episode that I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit in predictions and stuff happened in the comics also. And that's interesting stuff that, I want to go back and now look at the comic story arcs for those and stuff like that and to see how it played out there. If it's completely the same, a little bit different, stuff like that. It's really interesting to be able to kind of experience it that way, like experience it backwards, basically. But do you want to get to some predictions?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Why don't you kick off predictions?
Okay, well, next week is like the finale of the finale, so that there's probably a lot. I hope it's a supersized episode, to be honest. Like, I just really enjoyed this arc, and they're already pretty meaty episodes to begin with, and they were able to fit a lot in this time slot. But I just wanted to be like a nice like 50-minute episode, just to really tie up some ends here. But there's quite a few things that I kind of want to see here. I'm still pulling for the Onslaught Sentinel. I still think that's going to be like the big bad villain of the final episode they got to overcome, and it might not be someone they'll be able to defeat. It just feels like we're really on like a time crunch here. Like this whole episode, they're telling we only got 12 hours left before the world ends. So like, I have a feeling that we're leaning towards them not possibly getting this victory that we're hoping they're going to get. And then of course, I'm wondering, of course, if some possible theories about Gambit coming back as a horseman of death coming into play is going to happen too, coming through this whole Onslaught Sentinel storyline. I'm really excited what's going to happen there. And then, of course, this episode ends on a crazy note because going back even to like the original movies, the whole thing about like Wolverine trying to attack Magneto, but it's just never going to happen because like he can just control metal. It's always been like this fun dynamic because like it's touched on in the movies multiple times and of course in comics and all that. But in this episode, we get like the great moment where kind of Wolverine gets him and he gets in the back and he goes, I've been through a lot of wars and I'll tell you what, the brave ones usually die first, and that if Magneto's like, okay, well, I'm gonna pull out this one last little move on you, and yeah. So, but and he pulls out all the stuff on Wolverine, but at least wonder next week, like I don't know if that move killed him. I doubt it killed him because we've seen in the comments there are moments where he's died, but not like that. He still got his healing factor, I assume. So that's mean we're gonna get some bone claws Wolverine here, and I think that'd be some pretty cool stuff here. That'd be really awesome to see, and that'd be a really cool way to kind of bring the character back into like a phase one, version of himself. Like he's got to find a way to get like the whole animantium back into his body. Excuse me. But also like when it comes to like the MCU side of the X-Men, like I think the show has only reaffirmed my thoughts that like we get Wolverine and Professor X and Magneto were kind of like the faces of the old movies and stuff like that. I really want to see some of these other characters that kind of take the reins and be like Cyclops and Storm and Jean. Like I want them to kind of be kind of focused. They got some great character dynamics as well. Rogue as well. I think we could do a better job with Rogue than we did in the past movies. And I think that it'd be a great opportunity to kind of capitalize on some of these awesome character story arcs that we have here, and especially in a live action version.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I've said plenty of times while we were recapping this season, Storm's one of my favorite characters. I'd love to see kind of a bigger focus on Storm. I was never a huge Cyclops fan. Not that I have anything against him. I think he's a cool character in general, and I like him. But I always leaned more towards kind of Wolverine in that sense because they were always at odds, like type of thing over Jean and just in general type of like rules and stuff like that. So I kind of always leaned towards Wolverine in that situation. But yeah, I love Storm. I would love to see more of a focus on Storm in the MCU and stuff like that. I would really like to see if they're gonna bring in the mutants. I mean, not if, when they bring in the mutants, I'd almost like to see them bring in as a small core team, almost like what they're gonna do with the Fantastic Four. We're gonna get the Fantastic Four all together, type of thing. So almost like if we could get like Professor X and then like the first four.
The team X-Men in the portrait, like that we always see. That would be
something like that. And then you get more of a focus on each individual. It's not like, hey, there's 12 people on this team already. We're not going to be able to spend more than 10 minutes on each one of them's real stories. And then
I think they need to be established as a team already.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it would be really cool if kind of the first movie introduction to the MCU with the X-Men is kind of that small core team, and then maybe the sequels can pull in more of them and add to their rosters, kind of almost like the Avengers did, where we kind of started with kind of a small amount of Avengers, and then we kind of we got used to them, and so we knew them. And then we were able to kind of slowly add more people with different personalities and different power sets, obviously, to kind of compete with different villains and stuff like that. I think that would be a really cool way to kind of, get fans connected to the core group as they bring them in, type of thing. But that's what I would really like to see. And I one comment I had, I legitimately made it out loud during that final scene was, holy graphic fuck. Like that just was like, from the moment I was not expecting Wolverine's claws to go right through Magneto. Like I was like, oh,
very anime.
Yeah. It was just holy shit. And then you just you focus on Magneto's face, like while that's happening. Oh man. And then yeah, Wolverine getting the adamantium pulled straight out of him. Like I was not expecting it to be going that far.
Yeah, great nod to the comics. If you haven't seen the shots from the comics before. And I also believe they kind of did their own version of it in the Days of Future Past movie. When Magneto takes all those kind of those rebars and puts them all through his body, it was also kind of a nod to that as well. So again, kind of like you were talking about earlier, like the way they're able to translate these things in different ways from the comic to animation to live action and their own versions of it. It's just really fun.
Yeah, and so another thing I would love to see Wolverine with bone claws, kind of just like healing and kind of rebuilding, I guess. But I'm also wondering if we're still taking hints from the intro. I'm wondering if next episode we're going to see an appearance of the Phoenix. And the only reason I'm kind of like thinking of that, not only because it's the season finale, is the fact that we kind of had Jean telepathically saying goodbye. And that was very reminiscent of the movie where...
X2, yeah.
Yeah. where that happens. She
Same
says
thing,
goodbye. Yeah, she says goodbye to Cyclops, and so I just felt like it was very, very fitting.
Yeah.
And so this might be that moment where it happens again, and then Phoenix power like burst forth type of thing, like, and then we get Phoenix for the rest of the finale type of thing. Like I would really like to see something like that. So
Yeah,
I
that was
mean,
a brutal scene too, man. Freaking
yeah.
Sinister Control Cable. We didn't even talk about that. That was nuts.
That's because so much stuff happened in this
Yeah,
episode. There's so many other things that happened. Like, yeah, it's whew. Oh, maybe after, like, maybe we'll do final thoughts after the finale, like where we'll actually do a separate video, and it's not even on one specific episode. We'll do a finale episode recap, but then we'll do like a final thoughts and just like everything we couldn't really spend that much time on. We'll talk about too, because the series has given us so much. Like this season of it doesn't even feel like it was. It's only 10 episodes. It doesn't even feel like it was only 10 episodes. Like I feel like this is like 2 seasons worth of content, like type of thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like just so much has happened from the first episode to now. Like how crazy it's been. I really hope, we're getting multiple seasons of this, because I've enjoyed it.
Oh, for sure.
Like type of thing along the way so much. But yeah, I can't wait for next week. I just like you, the only thing I'm hoping for that I'll put on record is that we get a supersized finale. Like that's the only thing like right now that I'm like crossing my fingers that we get something a little bit longer. But other than that, as we always say, that's what we think. Let us know in the comments below. What did you think of episode 9? And how do you think this season is all going to end? Are we going to have, some kind of victory, or are we going to be left with an epic cliffhanger and we kind of have to wait for a season 2 to get a resolve? There is no wrong answer. We really don't know what's going to happen. And as always, don't forget, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to hear about all of our latest audio and video podcast releases. Bye, everybody!
Popping Off presents That Recap Show.